Hi, this is Ray Horner from 93.5, 1590 WAKR, and of course, right here, WAOH.TV as well. Welcome to another edition of Horner's Corner, where we sit down and talk with Akron's greats. And this gentleman here with us this month, I personally think is one of Akron's greats that maybe not everybody talks about, but let me tell you, they should. This guy is Akron born and bred, from his days as a Buchtel Griffin to the Miami Hurricanes to the NFL to coming back to our wonderful community and taking his knowledge and applying it to coaching so many kids, and then what he has given back to the greater Akron area. Not only his knowledge in coaching, but also thinking about certain organizations that have needed his help. My guest this month is my good friend, Jay Brophy. Jay, good welcome to our show today.
Hey, thanks, Ray. Appreciate you having me on. Maybe not the greats, but the good. I'll take that. I'll take good.
Well, I think you're one of the greats. Jay and I even spent some time in a broadcast booth together for about a decade, being on the road so many hours and talking good stuff about Akron, sports, athletics, and all of that. So as we like to do with this, Jay, let's start out with, it began in Akron, member of the Buchtel Griffins, but the love for athletics had started somewhere. Where did that all start?
Just as a kid. I was a kid that got fascinated with basically the three sports back then: baseball, basketball, football. There wasn't much else on. But part of my family, my dad was a worker and all, and I tried to do stuff like auto mechanic stuff that he'd be doing. Now, you have to know my dad. I go out and he's trying to put brake shoes on a car. Hey, Dad, can I help? And he goes, sure, come on over. About 2.5 minutes go by, and he's like, what the hell? What are you doing? And I went, okay. We grabbed my basketball, dribbled up the court. So I just grew up loving sports, and I had a couple buddies who were fascinated. I mean, we'd read the paper and know all the stats of baseball, because he would call me, what's the lineup for Detroit today? Who's back? And we'd know. And guys would flip out about this, but it's almost like it was an obsession for me. And I love those sports. I used to dribble my ball up the Kerr Park, where all the guys played, and that's the things I think are missing today. But I fell in love with it. I learned how to play these games. Football, and again, I'd watch certain positions, certain people, and I would do it probably in obsess, and I knew that I wanted to find out everything about them, everything they did. And I kind of knew then, because I told my dad, ironically, he grabbed me from school. I was in 5th grade. And I came out, and I go, you know what, Pop? I'm thinking about being a professional athlete. He went, oh, well, okay. He goes, well, what do you think? I go, I don't know yet. Football, basketball, baseball, I don't know. But I'm going to be one. And I from that day, I really believe that.
Well, let's fast forward then and go to the Buchtel Griffins. I know you did very well on the basketball court, playing that power forward position, and of course, excelling in football as well, playing a linebacker. And we're going to get to that next stage of your life in a little bit. But talk about being a Buchtel Griffin. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
Big time. Around this neighborhood or here in Akron, you always 1060. So all it's had to be said, because we're all Griffs from Copley Road at 1060. But I was lucky enough to get a hold of Mike Buckner, who was our coach. And Mike had went to the pros. He was Northwest, well-educated man, took over the program. And I was getting recruited by other schools. But all my buddies and people I knew here, I wanted to stay at Buchtel. But he was a guy that pushed us beyond belief. I mean, and it was grades first, hallway, everything. If you were walking home with what he thought was the wrong kind of people, he's a boy would tell you. And the discipline from that, to learning how to work hard, to understand the game. And you better have answers when he asks. But don't have a D on that report card, because it ain't going to be midterm. If you had a D on a report card and you get after practice and you're leaving, hey, bro, come here. I go, oh, no. He knew. And we'd scramble on all fours, 10, 15 yards, whatever, back foot, till that D was up. He would check. So I got to the point where I loved playing with all my buddies the game. I knew I loved the game. And there wasn't too much call for 6'3" centers in college. And that kind of went to the wayside. And basketball coach asked me, and I said, yeah, I think it's football for me. And I still played basketball, but football was it. And Mike was such a big factor in being honest with me. He told me about college, what to expect, where I was going, the difference with races, because I was one of only happened to be white guys on the team. I never paid attention to any of that. These are my buddies where I grew up. But he would explain everything to me, and he pushed you. Never accepted average from me. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate looking back on. Maybe not as much at the time, but he made me want to learn the game that much more and be that much better.
The one thing I know from talking to our guest this time on Horner's Corner is Jay Brophy, and I know from many years in the vehicle with you, one of the things, your fondest memories was the Turkey Bowl game.
Oh, man.
You love the Turkey Bowl game.
We miss it. I wish we had it back. And I actually was with a group of guys that we were trying to talk to everybody to keep the Rubber Bowl one way or another, somehow salvage it. Because doubleheaders, Friday nights were played there. We had the Thanksgiving Day game. I mean, that 20,000 fans and people you could cook in and everything going on. It's great for the community, great for the schools in that competition, and sorely missed. Nothing against playing down at Akron U, but now. But you at one time we're paying $5,000 a game. Well, city says we don't have that kind of money. Well, we're popping $50,000 a year just to play at a turf stadium. We don't need that. We needed to build more turf stadiums. And God bless them, I wish we could have saved the Rubber Bowl because it was just tradition. Everybody turned out. You smell the turkey, the pies in the air. And then we played at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So we had the breakfast in the morning, and back then the paper had the city series, so the awards, so you saw who made it, who didn't, and guys would get ticked off, and that just led to more of the game. But it seemed like the whole town turned out.
Well, you can see the electricity in his eyes just talking about the Turkey Bowl game. So we're with Jay Brophy on Horner's Corner. So, Jay, let's go to the next step. You mentioned you were being recruited. You end up going to the Miami Hurricanes, which is a long way from the city of Akron. So, one, I guess, talk a little bit about that decision, which led you to Miami. And as you mentioned, you love being here with your buddies in Akron. Was there a time that it was difficult for you on the road playing football down in Miami?
Absolutely. And I think one of the problems was when I went to Miami, I visited Arizona, Michigan, Ohio State, those. And it came down to Miami and Michigan. And I chose Michigan for its long story, but I chose Miami. And one of the things that didn't hurt, I was in a pool at January 2nd. It was 85 degrees there and -2 at home. So I kind of did, well, this is like the gig for me. So I was sold on Howard Snellenberger and starting a new program and have a chance to play right away. And it was a no-frills place. We had nothing. Our little locker room was nothing. We practiced on grass fields that just weren't about anything. We stayed in dorms, didn't have much, heat shut off, things like that. We just didn't have much. And he was there to salvage the program, but he sold a bunch of us on the idea of how we would be able to win. And we bought into it. Now, the problem with me is I found out the school was a business. And it's not a bad thing. But I went to school, and all of a sudden I'm going to class, doing these things. It's 8-10 hours a day. It's a little disenchanted with that part. I love the football part, but they have to go hand in hand. And being that far away, 1,300 miles or something from home.
No support system.
Right, you have none. You have your buddies you're with at that time, and that's why we've probably grown so close. But I had made up my mind that I knew better. I was 19 and the smartest guy in the world. I was much smarter than Coach. So I started having talks with Coach Snellenberger about maybe not coming back. I needed to find myself. I needed to find what direction I wanted to go. And I would transfer. I'd get it all together. And he tried to talk me out of it, but then said, that's your decision. And I did not know this, but he had already called my parents and said he's leaving the scholarship open. He said he's got to do what he's got to do. I believe the scholarship open. But I didn't just quit. I walked over and talked to him about it, man to man. And I just said, I got to go. Well, I found out real quick that when I left college, that at 19, I didn't know a whole lot. And I ended up going with my brother, so I needed a job. We worked at a rubber plant. My brother ran out in West Helena, Arkansas, cleaning out lamp black out of an old rubber factory. Now, you do months of that and staying in Arkansas. I won't fly in a plane over Arkansas for fear I might crash and have to stay another day alive because I'd survive. Nothing against about it. I'm not going back ever. But that was an eye-opener, and we were making $5 an hour, and I'm watching the progress of our team. And later on, they played in the Peach Bowl, and I was watching the TV, and they said to get on them. And I called at the time Hubbard Alexander, my tight end coach at the time. Hubbard went on with the Cowboys and won Super Bowls and all. He was a great guy. I said, hey, I'm going to let Coach know. And I watched the Peach Bowl and everything else, and I got a phone call from him. And said, from Coach Snellenberg. And I said, Jay, your scholarship's good. You come on down for the spring semester. And I said, all right. I was there, and I had to go to summer school to pick up enough credits to be eligible for next year. So I busted my arm, went down there. But he brought me in, and he told me, he goes, listen, we'll talk about this for the last time. After this is it. No more where am I go. You got it. And I felt like I was reborn again. I was like so much more dedicated to whatever was going on, because after that work and being away from football, that's all I needed. And again, at 19, you're not a genius. And I found that out. Hell, even 23 or 4, I wasn't a genius. But my coaches were great. They switched me to linebacker. It was a whole different story. And ironically, that works out because I would have graduated the year before the national championship. Instead, I was the captain of the first ever national championship team at the University of Miami.
That's where we were going next. He played on a national championship team with the Miami Hurricanes. He moves to linebacker, and you just had a reunion. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was either last year or the year before where you went down to Miami with all your former teammates from the national championship team. Talk about that.
We went down last year. We were trying to have – we had the 40th with Coach Schnellenberger. He was still alive and all. His health had declined, and we were trying to make the 45th instead of going 50 years because they didn't know how long Coach would be around. And unfortunately, Coach didn't make it. But his wife did. And we had the big dinner and get together. And I'll say this, and that's why I'm really fanatic about sports and what it means to you, and especially football, that guys on this team that I hadn't seen in 30 years, 40 years, that it's almost like you haven't seen them for a year. You pick right up. And it's that bond and that locker room and that life of getting, as a young kid, beat up out there and no one to go to but your buddies, that you build these lifelong relationships with. And they've carried over now. We've got our group texts, and we've got our guys that try to get together every year. But that bond stayed all those years. And that was kind of like the best part about going back. It wasn't about the great facilities, which they are now, all the great stuff going on. It was really seeing the players, Ms. Snellenberger, and all the people, old coaches that helped put that program together.
Yeah, and carried it to the highest that it could possibly be. Jay Brophy is with us. He is this month's guest on Horner's Corner. I'm Ray Horner. Glad you're on board with us. So, Jay, let's transition now from the Miami Hurricanes, correct me if I'm wrong, second-round draft pick of the Miami Dolphins. Jay, as a rookie, is playing in the Super Bowl, correct? Against the San Francisco 49ers. The Miami team is quarterbacked by Dan Marino. Something else with the pageantry. You're a rookie, and you're playing in the Super Bowl.
Huge, because you come off a national championship. Now, to me, this is the pinnacle. You won a national championship. First national championship ever in school history. And the next year, you're in the Super Bowl, playing for those stakes on the biggest level ever. The last thing. So it was overwhelming, I'd say, to start with. But the disappointment of not winning was probably, it was huge because it was, well, first of all, I said Roger Craig beat me in all these passes, which I can't see, but.
If you ever watch the highlights, what he's talking about is, I think it's John Pacenda or whoever was narrating, kept saying that Jay Brophy missed the tackle, and actually you were trying to cover up for one of your other mates.
Other guys that missed it. One of the ones I wasn't even in the game. I was on the sideline going, thanks, John, you know. But out of that, though, I took a lot because, you know, you talk about going back to Super Bowl and all that. Ask Dan Marino how he feels. Yeah. Dan never went back. Dan doesn't wear his ring because he said it was a loser ring for him. But all those years, Miami hasn't been back since then. And I always say, see, they cut me, got rid of me. I don't know, maybe I made a difference.
Yeah.
You know, they all of a sudden been back. But we haven't been back since. Yeah. It is such a rare thing. And you try to take in so much. But I'd bet against a lot of the first-year Super Bowl teams because of that fact. It is overwhelming. It's just crazy, all the cameras and things to go on, the practices. It's not the
As
same.
you look back on that year, and I don't want to say take it for granted, but you go from a national championship into the Super Bowl, you're probably going to yourself, well, this is what the NFL is all about.
Absolutely.
And you never went back again.
Absolutely. And you don't prepare for the injuries. And they say not for long for the NFL standing that, and that's true. The average player does not make the pension. The average player, they'll say 3 years. If you look by position, it's sometimes 2, 1.5, 2.5 years. You got to think top 5% make it. They get the contracts and get paid. Now, these guys are making great money now, but you don't last long, and it ends not on your terms. And that was probably the toughest. After losing the Super Bowl, I'm thinking getting back and on, continue to have injuries, continue to have surgeries. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at my third year with the Dolphins of getting released. And because of the injury, they just say, we didn't think he'd be back. They've got always, for the blue-collar guy like me, I was a good player, never a great one, but they've got replacements. And that's just the business. Now, I got to hang on with the Jets and get my pension, but thank God that I did. But you automatically said after having that Super Bowl, oh, we got a chance, we got time for this. I've been here 10 years doing this. 4 years and it was over. And the transition of leaving is something I've hoped they've worked on with ball players, because the mental, physical, and all takes its toll on you after you're out of the league. You don't get that kind of treatment anymore. You're not surrounded by those kind of people anymore. And you're basically just kind of left on your own. And it's trying to figure out, you were on such this high, such that level. Now where do you go?
We're talking with Jay Brophy on Horner's Corner. We're going to get into post-NFL as he came back to the greater Akron area, and we're for the better of it, coaching and certainly spreading his goodwill. But I want to go back to the NFL and end the conversation on the NFL side of your life. As Jay mentioned, he was injured a number of times, I think thumbs and groins and all that stuff. He got injured, and as he mentioned, his NFL career was over in 4 years. But also, less than 10 years ago, you were involved in the suit against the NFL for veteran football players, which ended up being positive. I don't know how positive it has been, but talk about that, because the injuries certainly have affected your life. And you and I have had conversations about this, so this isn't the first time you've talked about it.
Exactly.
And hopefully you don't mind that, because you've been pretty open with it. But Jay suffered some injuries that have certainly changed. I don't want to say other words, but it's changed your life a little bit.
Oh, it's big time. And I think the thing about it is, physically, you're used to it. The body's going to hurt. Things are going to be the way they are. And I think we were all on board with that. The brain damage, the CTE stuff that's all come out, we weren't aware of. And there was no precaution on that stuff. We were taught to hit with our heads, all that. And when you see the story with the brain damage, and you see Mike Webster and those guys, this is all true stuff. There's players still suffering today like that. Now, I was diagnosed with early onset dementia years ago. Now that has turned into Parkinson's. The other damages that I have going on, I've lost sight in an eye. I've had parts where I lose some of the memory. I process things slower. I've got all these pointed out. And that is what you weren't expecting. And I don't think any of the players were. Now, the biggest thing for me is getting a diagnosis and finding out. Because I'm really, honestly, I'm all right with it. I'll be fine. But it's just, you have to change your life. And I had to. And that ended one of the big reasons why I got away from coaching. Because it's changed since this time now. I've got to start really working on my health and what's going on for the next how many years. But the lawsuit did come through. People are starting to get paid. I have received some awards and opportunities to receive treatment. And they'll find an answer. I don't know on our time, but it's the tau protein. A lot of things going on with it, but it's definitely changed my life, slowed me down. But I think the big thing with it is get constantly, find people, be aware of what you have diagnosis-wise, and it's a lot easier to deal with when you find those things out.
And finally, the NFL seems to be taking these especially head injuries, very serious, at least more serious than did when you played back in the mid-'80s.
They didn't care. Obviously, they hid information, and they didn't care. Now they're saying that and doing all that. They're trying to make it safer. I don't know how much you can. I think really what it is going to be finding basically a cure. Then I was just talking to a neurologist about this, and he said what they're finding is certain tau proteins in their head show up. Now you could take your son to a doctor and find out if he has this type of tau protein or whatever. He's more susceptible to CTE. Don't play football. If he doesn't have it, most time he's not going to end up with CTE at all.
Interesting.
So they're finding avenues and ways. It's just making sure that they stay with that and do that now. So good things are going to happen, I think, down the road. But before that, it was delay, deny until they die.
Jay Brophy is with us. He is our guest on Horner's Corner, and of course, I'm Ray Horner with you. And so, Jay, let's do it. You come back to Akron, and it takes you a while. You get back into coaching, giving back to the community. That's where I first met you. You were coaching the St. Vincent St. Mary football team. LeBron owes your team, and you were talking to me about recruiting and such. But this is something that you still study film today, and you coach. So that's a passion of yours. So take us into the Akron area and getting back into coaching.
Well, you know what? I used to think coaches that came out of our practices at night, late at night, what the hell are they doing? Why would I want to be over here watching that practice film over and over again and leave it at 10, 11 o'clock at night? We all thought they were crazy. It took me 3 years, or 2 to 3 years after I retired, like run around jobs and not just being lost, kind of like not feeling a part. Mm-hmm. When I started coaching, it was therapeutic. And all of a sudden, those hours became my hours. I did not mind. I didn't find it being work. Loved watching film. Loved working with kids. 30-some years later, it ended, but I'm still a stickler on film. And coaches laugh when I watch film with the kids. They go, oh, God, we'll be here broke. We'll be here 3 or 4 hours. But I love the intricacies of that. And that, again, was therapeutic. And giving back as far as I like to share the experiences I had, good and bad, with kids because I think, I made a lot of mistakes. I quit school, a lot of things that went on. And I think if you can share that with them, not all may get it. Unfortunately, experience is the greatest teacher, but if you can make a difference in someone's life, helping them out, to me, is what I'm all about. It makes me happy. I feel fulfilled. I love doing it. And I'm doing something that didn't feel like work.
He's one of Akron's greats, Jay Brophy, and I want to get back to you giving back because you've done more of giving back to the community than just coaching, and I don't want to minimize that. But you coach LeBron James. Can I throw one question out because he was playing wide receiver for you, and I remember you said to me one time in the press box, Ray, they can't cover him. They can't cover him. So talk about LeBron, and did you know how special he was at that point?
Oh, yeah. I think watching the junior high, watching him play basketball, talking to his football coaches and stuff, this kid was exceptional. You talk about a gym rat and a kid that studied everything and knew history. He knew his sports history. And his work ethic was unbelievable, even in football. Now, he would leave football practice and go up to the gym and shoot for 2 hours and do things. That's the way he was. But I say he played wide receiver for us. If we had more time, I think he could have played quarterback. He could have played tight end. He could have played safety, any of them. He really studied the game. He knew how to run routes. He knew what coverages were in and what they were trying to do. And whenever we were in doubt, Danny DeGeorge, who's a long-time Lake coach now, was my offensive coordinator. And when in doubt, he'd look at me and I go, throw the fade. Throw it up and let that kid go get it. But I think he could have easily been a college professional. And I say wide receiver. I looked at him like Harold Carmichael was the first 6'9" wide receiver out of Philadelphia. And across between that and Randy Moss. Smooth, fluidity, great hands, height, power, and he didn't even know how strong he was at the time. Mm-hmm. But I think he would have stayed a wide receiver. But he talked about tight end. I think he'd have been a receiver. But he could have played professional football. He had the work ethic, the understanding. It's just, what do you want to do? Obviously, he made the right choice.
Yes, he did. One of the Jays games that I did play-by-play was the infamous Fog game out in West Branch, and LeBron was in that playoff football game while Jay coached St. Vincent St. Mary. So you coached for a number of years. Then you actually end up going to the broadcast booth with me, and we had a great time for about a decade. And then you got back in, and you always told me, I got that itch to coach. Yeah. You got back into coaching. You go to Manchester. Yeah. You eventually become the head coach. You work down there with Jim France. And then you've decided to step away from coaching, but you give back. And this is the aspect that I wanted to bring to the forefront. Whenever I've talked to Jay about certain dollars or certain things, and he's done wristbands, it's always been thinking of our Akron community and giving back to the kiddos. And I think that goes back, I'll let you expand here, it goes back to your days of on the streets, playing sports and book duel and all that stuff, and seeing all these kids and the opportunities maybe that they didn't get that you had in going to Miami and stuff. So talk about your idea of working with these kids in the Akron area.
Actually, I was all with the coach, and I took on a job years ago out at IBH with Father Sam Ciccolini, and it was working with troubled youth. And I found out those were my kind of kids too. They're the kind of kids that bounce around a classroom, ADH, whatever the problems are, but are those tough ones in the classroom. We love working with them and seeing that being turned around. Football players, we coach with legendary Tim Flossie, God rest his soul. When we coached at Central Howard, and those kids know the school was closing, they stayed with us regardless. Kids worked jobs, would come down and be hungry. We always made sure we had meals, food for them to eat, things like that to do. It's unbelievable how kids perform when they feel like they're full and they're okay and people do care about them. And I was hard as a coach, but I was just as funny and laughing off the field, and on the field. But coaching at Manchester, I did not want to be a head coach anymore. But when Jim retired, I was like, I don't want to leave yet. When I go, I already told him he gave me too much red and black to go anywhere else. So I said, the guys asked me to apply, and I said, okay, I will. But I did it with some hesitancy because I just felt like I liked to be a coach anymore, not the head coach. But I went for it and got the job, and with no regrets. But I went after it and getting kids out, building things up, doing it. But nowadays, the thing that has changed is there's so much more involvement with parents, and you have to be on chat lists and monitoring what goes on their social media. The administrators, everybody's a lot more involved. And that was like just probably a little bit too much for me. And I found that I know what we were doing was right, or what we were trying to do. And it got a little too busy. And I started having the health problems. I didn't know why I couldn't see out of my left eye. I didn't know why I was tripping. I'd losing my balance. I couldn't demonstrate things that I was going, there's something going on. And I found that out. And during the last year, probably third game or so, I went to my wife and said, this may be it. Right now, I just don't feel right. Something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I was diagnosed with MS, all these different things. And we still don't know what that is. But the others came out, and I'm glad that it was time. I became a dinosaur. The only thing that's tough to walk away with or from is being able to help those guys out. And lots of it's not always about them going to college. Maybe it's a kid that just wasn't going to school, didn't feel a part of anything, right. Got a chance to move on and do something. And again, buy them lunch, taking a place to do things like that, making phone calls for them. For me, it was not work, it was fun. But you only get one chance. You get a second chance. But boy, after that, it's over. But you have to try to help these kids. You have to follow up on stuff with them. It's not just letting them play the game. The game's great, but a lot more goes into it. And that's what I hoped that parents and administrators all realize, that a lot of those coaches are father figures. They're the people around them all the time and take that interest. And I made sure the guys I hired felt the same way.
Jay Brophy, he's our guest on Horner's Corner, and he's one of Akron's greats for sure in many different ways. And I asked Jay this question before, so his answer and explanation will not surprise me. But you heard Jay's injuries, and certainly he's not bringing them out. We're not doing it for you to feel sorry for Jay, because I said to Jay years ago, with everything that happened, would you do it all over again the same way? And your answer is?
Yes. Yes, I was a football player. Now, the 90% I would change was off the field, on the field. I'd have done better. I'd have done more. I want to play better. So all of that's there. That competitive edge is still in me. I want to do everything better. But no, man, the camaraderie and what went on out there, the brothers I have now, the kind of relationship I have with all that, and what I learned, what I was able to give back from them, from those experiences, that's priceless. And no, I would do that all again.
He's one of my great friends, and you probably heard how he's your friend here in the Akron area. He is one of Akron's greats. Jay, thanks for joining me this month, brother. Always appreciate our good friendship. Jay Brophy, our guest on Horner's Corner. I'm Ray Horner. Thanks for watching and listening.